a case out of Kentucky. This is Kentucky versus Shawn Stines, also known as Mickey, the ex-sheriff of Letcher County in Kentucky. Okay. As I do, let's just dive right into it. Okay. This goes all the way back to September 19th of 2024. District Judge Kevin Mullins was fatally shot in his chambers at the Letcher County Courthouse in Whitesburg, Kentucky. And the alleged assailant, Letcher County Sheriff Shawn Mikey Stines, was arrested at the scene and charged with first-degree murder. This is Judge Kevin Mullins, and this is a younger picture of Sheriff Shawn Stines. Lots of money there on the pictures, but they are both well known in the community for doing good work. They had a great professional relationship by all accounts. Not too much information coming forward on what their personal or friendship type relationship was, but they had lunch regularly with groups from the courthouse. There never seemed to be any incident. They're both very well known for their work in the opioid crisis in the county in Kentucky, and they have received citations and etc. in regards to that. They worked very, very well. This was the mug shot. He did it. As you can see, this is an older picture. This is Shawn Stines on the day of arrest. Now, Judge Kevin Mullins, he'd been a judge for a while. He was appointed in 2009 by the governor, Stephen Beshear. He served as a district judge for Kentucky's 47th Judicial District. He covered Letcher County. He was actually shot in his office. He was elected to the position in 2010, and he's been re-elected since. He's very well liked. No issues, no issues of anything known in the area. Prior to his judgeship, he worked as an assistant Commonwealth attorney in Letcher County, and he's a graduate of the University of Kentucky and the University of Louisville School of Law. He is a local. He's been there the whole time. Well liked, well respected, and by all accounts had a good relationship until the day of the murder with ex-sheriff Shawn Stines. He left behind his wife and 2 daughters in the community that is grieving for him greatly. At his service, over and over, people were expounding all of the good works that he did in office and out of office. It was, of course, as funerals are, with such an upsetting, this whole county is grieving and shaken to its core. There are 2 well-loved professionals, trusted professionals in the area, and this is shaking them all. Sheriff Shawn Mickey Stines, before his election as sheriff in 2018, actually served as a bailiff in Mullins' courtroom, and he had been reelected again in 2022. By all accounts, they had a great professional relationship, but as I said, reporting as far as their personal friendship has not. There has not been a lot of it. After the arrest, which the arrest was done by his own deputies right there in the court, right immediately. It was in his chambers that he was shot, Judge Mullins, and he was shot by Shawn Stines. And when we get to the evidence of that in the preliminary hearing, you'll understand why I can say confidently that there is no doubt that the person pulling the trigger was Shawn Stines, and that his action caused the death of Judge Kevin Mullins. There's no doubt. There's video. The judge's court chambers were actually had video camera. There's no audio, but there's definitely video. You can understand that in a county like this is something with professionals that work actually in the courthouse, okay, in Letcher County, these officials, everyone knows the defendant and the victim. And so we had to get a chief regional judge in. You had to get a higher up. You couldn't just use a regular judge. So the first to be assigned to the case was Regional Judge Rupert, the regional judge, Rupert Wilhott III. He's going to take the first appearance for Shawn Stines, ex-sheriff Shawn Stines. And he's also going to be part of the preliminary hearing where the evidence goes through to see if there's anything, if they can go forward with charges. But like I said, there's no doubt who pulled the trigger. It's all been caught on video. Stines' first appearance in court was on September 25th, almost a week after his arrest. At that point, he had not contacted a public defender or a private attorney. He had not made any statements besides the one he made at arrest, which was that he did make the statement, which will come up in the preliminary hearing, to one of the officers there, that they were trying to kidnap his wife and his family. He was obviously very distressed. When we get down to the evidence, I will point a few other things out. But it was just not going as usual. He sat in jail all that time until the 25th. At that point, a public defender joined him because they had to move forward with this first appearance. So he had at a public defender's office a Josh Miller, who actually represented him so that the charges could be read, that, you know, they could discuss whether he was indigent or not and start going forward with the process. Okay. Although the sheriff had not hired an attorney or filed a request with anyone to get a public defender, Chief Regional Judge Rupert Wilhott, he appointed Miller, said that Miller could go through, Josh Miller could go through, and they went through with the case. Now, at this point, I want you to notice that at this hearing was actually Shawn Stines, as you can see in the middle picture top there, on the dark suit next to him is Josh Miller, the public defender's office. That's the judge. But down below, we've got Jackie Steele, a very prominent prosecutor in the area. And we have from the Attorney General's office, we have Ramsey Dollum. And immediately, high-profile prosecutors were assigned to this case. This is a very high-profile, very going to be overly publicized, very gut-wrenching case. And very particular because these are court officials. Everyone involved is a court official of high standing. And so it's trouble. It's not only media trouble, but it's trouble throughout the community. People are just wrought to the bone. Everybody wants this to move along quickly. But then again, can't understand how the sheriff, I'm saying ex-sheriff because of the time. It is now the end of November and we know that he has resigned. Well, the sheriff, their beloved sheriff, how could something like this happen? Like, what is going on here? Like, the confusion is crazy. But the actual officials in charge actually are doing like top notch, getting everybody in that they could. So there's that Shawn Stines can get a fair trial. And that's going to be tough in this climate. He retired, as I was stating, on September 30th. The decision came after Governor Andy Beshear called for his resignation. During that first hearing, Judge Wilhott had actually said, I don't think you qualify to be a public defender. You've got a really great, job. Like, you're the sheriff. The sheriff makes $115,000 a year. Shawn Stines had disclosed that he owned his properties. He wasn't mortgaged. He was in fairly good condition, but he had made no effort to hire anyone or to do anything, and he needed representation. So the public defender was there for that hearing, but afterwards, Shawn Stines did hire private attorneys, and we'll get to that. But before that, after the first hearing, he was allowed to retire. He just resigned. as a retirement. His attorney, which is Mr. Bartley, we will get to that, actually put out a statement describing the departure as a retirement, stating it was made to allow for the successor to continue protecting the community while Shawn Stines is addressing his legal concerns in the legal case ahead. In other words, like, the video might be out of what he did, but he's not actually guilty yet. And we do need to keep that in mind. We still have a whole trial to go through. Because you would think with the video and everything out there that maybe, it wouldn't be a trial. But I have to tell you, that's not the way it's going. It's not the way it's going. And I was surprised. At the preliminary hearing on October 1st, Shawn Stines was represented by Jeremy and Carrie Bartley and Mr. Jim Cox, attorney Jim Cox, who was well known in the area. And I have to say that this is like a big team. Okay, this is a husband and wife team. They've been practicing in the area. He's a very well respected attorney, and it shows the seriousness that Shawn Stines has in actually putting forth a good defense. That he's no longer just sitting in jail and letting things happen. Once he had hired these attorneys, it became clear that there was going to be an active defense against this. Okay. At the preliminary hearing, there was testimony from only one person, Detective Clayton Stamper. He is a Kentucky State Police detective, and he testified about the things that led up to the shooting. Because until it happened, it seemed like a normal day around the courthouse. Stines and Mullins had lunch together earlier that day with several others, and by all accounts, the conversation was light. The only thing noticed is that the sheriff was not in his sheriff's clothing. He was in regular clothes. Okay, and there was something he started to bring up per one of the people at the lunch who has been talking to media, and it's been in several of the media reports, that Stines had brought up to Mullins something, and Mullins had said, let's talk about it after lunch in my chambers. And after lunch, he suggested a private meeting in his chambers, which they went. Okay. So the video will start at them in the chambers. There is no audio. And what I will do is I do have the video for you. I also have the video of the first appearance. Let's just copy all of these. This was the first appearance hearing that we saw the Zoom picture of. If you would like to hear about that and hear his demeanor. But I am not going to play this shooting video online. Out of respect for the family. He has 2 daughters and a wife who are grieving whatever the issues were at home or not, and we'll get to that. There was some reporting about that going on now too. They have been there every day, stone-faced and solemn to support him. Each court, all 3 courts hearings that I have seen, they were there. And I don't think that they should have to see that online accidentally or whatever. You guys can watch it. It is from the hearing, the preliminary hearing that we're talking about right now. And I will list it in the description for those of you that are seeing this at a later date. For those of you in the live chat, I have put the link there for you. But you will hear actually those viewing it. There are gasps, audible crying. It is upsetting. It is horrible to watch the last moments of someone's life, and to also see someone that you love or you care about or that you knew doing something like this and not having any explanation for it. Okay. Before the shooting that occurs in the judge's chambers, no doubt about it, a shooting happened. It is said that Shawn Stines is seen on the video to try to call his daughter. They have verified this by phones through the testimony also of Detective Stamper, that this was verified. That first, Shawn Stines tried to call his daughter from his phone. She didn't answer. He then got Judge Mullins' phone and dialed the number, and she picked up. And that is when he gave him back the phone and shot him. Now, we cannot hear the conversation of what happened. We do know that there were other things going on in Shawn Stines' life that could have led to some upsetting conversation, but the details are not there. Nothing to actually say why he would be this upset. Okay. Upon arrest, Stines expressed concerns about threats to his family, stating that they're trying to kidnap my wife and kid. He was obviously in an upset state. Okay. This is Detective Clayton Stamper. This is just a still image of the video, and I want to say that this is starting to make a little more sense to me when I see him in his in-street clothes. Now, they did remark that he always wore his uniform whenever anybody saw him in daylight, but apparently the night before there was, and this is from reporting on News Nation, the actual director there had a conversation with someone who knew the family. Now, they're not disclosing exactly who said, but they are saying that actually he was put out of the house the night before by his wife, Carolyn, and that is why he was in regular clothes, because he had no access to his uniforms, and that he had slept out of the house the night before all of this happened. And that could be what his demeanor was about at the lunch. They said some people said everything seemed normal, although he wasn't his usual jovial self, talkative self, or whatever. Like, he seemed a little reserved, and he did want to talk to Judge Mullins about something, and was put off and to have this private meeting, which he went to. But you can see here that Judge Mullins has his hands up. He's trying to talk to him. He's clearly pointing the gun at him. If you watch the video, he does shoot him. The judge does cower under the desk to try to get away. It had to be a horrible situation for him, and I understand why people watching it in the courtroom audibly gasped and audibly actually cried out. Just even thinking about it gets me a little bit choked up. My apologies. As you can see, it not only got them, it got Shawn Stines. This is the image captured during the preliminary hearing of when they played the video. He could not, like, he is obviously physically affected by it also. To actually have the knowledge that he was able to do this to someone that he knew for whatever reason, it's just hard to understand. And I can not even imagine what is going through his mind right now, how his family must feel, how the Mullins family and friends must feel, all of those who work with him, everyone around. You can understand how the whole county is like upside down right now. The preliminary hearing, the defense's argument during the preliminary hearing, because, there was a lot of detail given by Detective Stamper, was the only one to actually testify. Okay. And I want to say, like, I pretty much, that was all of the information in regards to the testimony. Really not a lot of great detail, but just his demeanor and things like that. They did not mention any arguments at home, or that he did not sleep home the night before in the preliminary hearing. That all came out later in news media reports, and it's not in a physical document I can see yet. So I will put that out there right now. I have not seen that in writing, but it was someone who runs that actual newspaper, is an editor over there, and they were speaking to people within the town and family, not the immediate family, but family close enough, and that was what they came forward. And I don't think that they would put it out there if it wasn't some truth to it. But like I said, it's not been documented in anything right now. The defense has argument. Jeremy Bartley contains that, Shawn Stines was experienced what he calls, and in quotes, an extreme emotional disturbance at the time, is suggesting that a charge of manslaughter instead of murder in the first degree would be more appropriate. He emphasized that the shooting was unplanned and occurred in the heat of passion, and he was advocating for a lesser charge if this should go forward. Because in this preliminary hearing, Judge Wilhott is actually hearing the testimony of Detective Stamper in the prosecution putting forward what they believe happened in regards, to whether or not there's enough there to proceed for an indictment from the grand jury. Okay. And the judge, Judge Rupert Wilhott, determined that there was sufficient evidence after seeing the video and hearing the testimony from the detective to proceed with the case, allowing it to advance to a grand jury for potential indictment, which means that Jackie Steele and Ramsey Dollard were able to go to a grand jury and secure an indictment. So Jackie Steele is serving as the lead prosecutor. He is the Commonwealth's attorney for Kentucky's 27th Judicial Circuit, and he's been actively involved in presenting the case to the grand jury, along with the Deputy Executive Director Ramsey Dollard, representing the Attorney General's Special Prosecutions Unit. Dollard collaborated with Steele in presenting this case to the Letcher County Grand Jury. And on November 21st, the grand jury came through with an indictment for Sheriff Shawn Mikey Stines on one count of murder of a public official, which is a higher degree of murder than just murder in the first degree. It carries the death penalty. And this was surprising. Not only just murder, they knew they were going to go for murder. The defense is already advocating special aggravating circumstances, egregious circumstances, to try to get the charges less. But instead of less, they went higher. In connection with this fatal shooting, the charge is particularly severe, reflecting the gravity of the offense against a judicial figure. Our laws here in America, in many states, if you go against a police officer or anyone in law enforcement or a judge or a protected witness, aggravating factors or death penalty in those states can be assigned. He could face the death penalty here, though prosecutors have not yet announced whether they will pursue that as a sentence. This was very hard for the family to hear, and I'm sure it was very hard for the defense also, because it makes it much more difficult to defend. But on the other hand, we know juries, right, everyone? The harder the charge, with you add the death penalty to it, it could make them lean a little more towards reasonable doubt, and maybe lean a little more towards that situation of he was having this exasperated situation and he was not in his right mind. You can see where the defense is going here, right? Like you can see, and if you look at the whole picture, it kind of looks more like that is the defense for something like this. You can see that his demeanor for the next hearing, which was on just the other day, actually yesterday, the 26th, was his arraignment, because he was indicted. Okay, he was indicted by Judge Julie H. Adams, another judge that was brought in, a senior judge. Senior judges are brought in. They're retired judges. They're brought into these special cases, and they oversee a lot of stuff. It's like an administrative position, but they have to come in and be the judge for serious cases along this nature. Now, she was appointed to preside over the arraignment of the former Letcher County Sheriff Shawn Mikey Stines, but her assignment is specifically for the purpose of receiving the grand jury indictment and overseeing the arraignment proceedings. During the arraignment, There is no indication that Judge Adams will continue to oversee subsequent phases of the case. The assignment of judges in these cases depends on a lot of things, including jurisdictional protocols and the availability of judges. So we have to wait and see as the case progresses what will happen there. Again, this is Jeremy and Carrie Bartley. These are the attorneys. They gave an interview on Crime Fix, talking about the defense. They're not actually putting out their whole strategy or anything, but again, they repeated that, obviously Shawn Stines was in a state of excitement, that something was wrong. He was not himself, that there was excruciating circumstances going on, and he was not acting in his character. During that arraignment and plea, he pled not guilty to the murdering of the public official during the hearing, and the judge declined to set the bond, citing community safety concerns and the severity of the charge. Stines' defense team indicated plans to request a bond at a future hearing. They're going to be requesting what is called an adversarial bond hearing. That is where both the prosecution and the defense will bring forth their oral arguments and motions in regards to why he should or should not receive a bond. Of course, the state is going to say that he's a danger, considering that he was in this state and he just killed a judge who he knew, and we don't know why, that it could happen again, and the severity of the charge and the safety of the community, whereas the defense is practically going to say the same thing, but more towards it's not going to happen again. He needs some help, probably a mental health evaluation. We need to get a clearer picture. He seems to be in full faculties. The judge did ask, are you sure he understands what's going on? And are you sure that he has clear understanding of everything against him? And his attorneys put on the record that absolutely they did. They did speak for him. He didn't answer. It was Carrie Bartley who actually answered the judge. Both, they went forward. The judge denied bail. Now, she had said she had considered giving him bail until the indictment came through at the higher charge of murder for a public official. It has much more severe penalty, which means much more flight risk and much more pressure on Shawn Stines in regards to showing up for trial and the outcome of it. Defense's strategy so far, Jeremy Bartley has suggested that the defense is going to argue that he was under extreme emotional disturbance at the time of the shooting. He highlighted a deposition that Stines had given days before the incident relating to a federal lawsuit involving a deputy under his supervision, which is a significant factor. Recently, statement by a reporter that information of a major family dispute the night before may also be a contributing factor, although Mr. Bartley did not mention that in the arraignment. That is from a news report that later came out. Now, in regards to that lawsuit, that's already the victim in that case pressed charges. The government pressed charges against the deputy under Shawn Stines' supervision, who was coercing her into sexual favors because she couldn't afford to pay for her alarm monitor for her probation. It happened, these incidences of coercion actually happened in Judge Mullins' office. Now, this all came to light through the trial of the deposition, but then recently, the victim in this case has come forward and filed a civil suit against those officials that should have known what was going on, and specifically named Sheriff Shawn Stines, because he was directly responsible as a supervisor to him. He had trained him. She's claiming no adequate training, and that he should have seen the signs and symptoms of what was going on, and that reporting of the incidences had been shoved under the rug. So he was giving a deposition in regards to all of this 3 days before. And of course, that could be very upsetting. Like, he's got a daughter himself, and he has a young daughter. I believe she's high school age, if not just a senior or about to graduate or just had graduated. I can't imagine, him actually not being affected by depositions of this nature, being held responsible for another's really atrocious behavior, misuse of authority, misuse of just, violation, no consent, you name it, like horrible circumstance. And then to be held like you should have known, like you should have taught him better. He had to feel some responsibility there. You could understand why he was under some pressure. Kind of makes sense. Okay. So we're waiting right now for the defense to file these motions. We don't know if they're going to go for the lesser charge, what they would be able to do, but they are actually going to try to put in for an adversarial bond hearing. Now, in Kentucky, an adversarial bond hearing, it's when, like I said, both the defense and the prosecution are going to present arguments. The type of hearing ensures that both parties have the opportunity to present evidence, allowing the court to make an informed decision on matters such as bail. Okay. Procedures for the adversarial bond hearings in Kentucky are outlined in their rules, of course, and it's RCR 4.40, 41, and 42 in the review of the conditions for release. But they do have to actually, once bond is denied, it's kind of like, the bond has been denied at the first, so it's going to be up to the court whether or not an adversarial bond hearing will occur, whether there's enough there for consideration and legal argument in regards to it. There's the key. They can't just say, oh, he was upset, he didn't mean to do it. There has to be legal case law and precedent to argue against the decision that the judge has already made. So where are we? Well, we've got murder of a public official, and he's currently in jail. Ex-Sheriff Shawn Mikey Stines currently is in jail. He pled not guilty at his arraignment. He is held without bond. And the next hearing is December 15th. And that hearing is not scheduled to be the adversarial hearing or even on motions of pleading for charges, because none of that has happened yet. That would be the standard post-arraignment hearings, to where procedures are set into place and schedules are put up in regards to how everything's going to go forward. Whether or not Shawn Stines will exercise his right, will actually, waive his right to a speedy trial and give the defense more time or not. That's when everything will be, come to light on both sides on December 15th. Well, that's really where we're at with this case. And there's a little bit more that I want to discuss, because it is a little upsetting, because already in true crime, there are many ways to report on cases, and there's many things, and we all have a fascination for these cases. This one is horrible and yet fascinating, and it's, you're like a deer in headlights here. You're fixated on like why, and even the watching of the video, we all know it's going to be horrible, but many of us will, I won't show it on YouTube, but did I watch it? Yes, I did. I wanted to see what happened. But there's the other part of you that gets in there when we talk about the family. Okay. The family of Shawn Stines in particular, there has been a lot of rumor and speculation as to why he did this. And one of the actual most prominent rumor out there is very damaging to the family right now. Carolyn and Lila Stines have been at every hearing. Carolyn Stines was on the very first appearance. You could see her mic muted over. She was there. They have been in the courtroom for the other two proceedings. Whatever was going on in their family personally, whether that fight happened the night before or not, and he was kicked out of the house, I don't know. I don't know what has been going on, but the rumor is that something may have happened to Lila. And there is a family member who's coming out. She is the sister-in-law of Carolyn Stines, and she is adamantly saying it's not true, and it's very damaging to the family to hear about it. She has started a GoFundMe to help support the family while Shawn Stines is retired from his sheriff's job, and to help them through this. I don't know how they're going to be able to keep up with their expenses and things, with everything coming in with the big law bills. You think that someone has a huge salary and everything's going to be fine until the day that salary just disappears. And you have all of these cases. I don't know how his retirement benefits or when any of that'll come through, but she did start a GoFundMe. And I'm not advertising the GoFundMe. I'm just saying she started one. This woman's name is Ginger Isaacs, and she proclaims to be an actual in-law of Carolyn Stines. But she is adamantly going out there and saying that none of this is true. And I'm only mentioning it because I want to stop talking about it. I'm mentioning it because I heard it, and I want to believe the family when they say it's not true. Because if it's true or not, we've got no business speculating and hurting them in any way. So until it gets documented, until you actually know, there's just zip it. I'm going to say it's not going to be talked about here, okay, until there's actually some evidence for it. And even if there is, would it not be their story to tell? Seriously. Let's leave it to them.